Can getting rich really be so simple? Well, I'm actually starting to think that maybe it can be. You see, most people who want to grow or simply preserve their wealth have to put it into a range of assets like real estate, bonds, and a diversified portfolio of stocks. They have to do this because saving your wealth in the form of fiat currency is the same as storing your water in the form of ice and then leaving it out in the sun. You're simply going to watch your value melt away from inflation. The financial industry is absolutely massive, and it's built on top of this conundrum. It sells its services because storing and preserving wealth is so complex and difficult to master. Well, over the past couple of months, I've started to come around to the fact that maybe there's an easier way. And it's for this reason that now I have nearly 50% of my liquid net worth stored in Bitcoin. With every passing day and with every new piece of information relating to this asset class that I absorb, I become more and more convinced that this is the biggest opportunity for my generation to accumulate and grow wealth. And this strategy is so simple that it's hard to believe. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that if something's too good, then it's probably not true. But I am an absolute believer that this is the exception. So let me explain. So guys, this is the Bitcoin price chart all the way from 2012 up to today. At the beginning of 2012, Bitcoin was at a price of $5.30. Fast forward to today and Bitcoin is trading at $10,600. Now the history of Bitcoin's price consists of huge parabolic moves up, followed by downward trends and consolidation. You can see here from 2012 the price went all the way from $5.30 all the way up to a price of over $1,000 in November of 13. Then we spent 2 years consolidating in a downward negative trend all the way to the beginning of 2016 at a price of just over $300. Then we had another massive parabolic move upwards all the way to the beginning of 2018 at a price of $13,000. Now if you looked at this chart using weekly candles, you would see that Bitcoin hit a price of $20,000 at a peak at the end of 2017. But it only hit this price for a very short period of time. So I don't think it's a very good representative sample of the price history. Instead, I think we need to take a long-term view and look at it on this monthly chart. But since that price close of $13,000, the price has gone through another period of consolidation for almost 3 years, all the way up to today at a price of just under $11,000. Now when I first started looking into Bitcoin, I thought that these price movements were purely speculative, completely unhinged from any underlying intrinsic value or any mechanisms. But as I'm about to show you in a second, these price movements are actually extremely explainable, predictable, and there's an underlying mechanism which is driving the price. First though, I want to show you the returns in Bitcoin compared to the S&P 500 over the past 10 years. So this calculator shows me my returns if I invested in the S&P 500 in August of 2010 and I reinvested all dividends. So you can see here that my total returns were 216.7%. So if you invested $1,000 in the S&P 500 in 2010, you would now have $2,160 on the basis that you would have had an annualized return of 14.4%. Now let's take a look at what would happen if you invested that same $1,000 in Bitcoin instead. So here we can see if you invested $1,000 in Bitcoin in August of 2010, you would now have $184,456,097. And you would have achieved an annualized rate of return of over 335%. So that's just over $2,000 versus $184 million. So now let's take a look at what's actually driving this price action. So guys, this is the Bitcoin stock to flow model. Now what is the stock to flow model? So stock to flow ratios are used to evaluate the current stock of a commodity against the flow of new production. So basically, what's the total amount currently available divided by the amount mined in a specific year. A higher ratio indicates that the commodity is increasingly scarce and therefore more valuable as a store of value. So this chart shows you Bitcoin stock to flow value by this line in red here. Overlaid on top of this line is the price of Bitcoin at any specific point in time. And the price is shown here in different coloured dots. So you have red dots, orange, yellow, green, blue, and then purple. Now the colour of these dots signify how far we are away from the next halving, So here you can see days until next halving. Dots in red indicate that we've just gone through a halving event and that we are 1400 days away from the next halving. And as the colour scale moves towards blue and purple, it gets increasingly closer to the next halving event. Now, what is a halving event, you might ask? Well, the halving event is when the number of newly issued bitcoins, which are given to the miners as a reward for securing the network, gets cut in half. And if you remember what the calculation for the stock to flow value is, it's the total current circulating supply divided by the current mining supply. So if you halve the current mining supply, your stock to flow value is essentially going to double. And that's what we've seen with Bitcoin every 4 years, because every 4 years Bitcoin goes through a halving event. And this is the underlying mechanism that's been driving Bitcoin's price, the mechanism that drives the price of all assets, simple supply and demand. And with Bitcoin, every 4 years, supply gets cut in half. And if demand stays the same, or if it increases like we've seen in previous years, then price goes through the roof. And we can see this here, because as the stock to flow value increases, so does price. And every time the stock to flow value increases, price has overshot the stock to flow value. But then eventually it's come back down to meet it, with the stock to flow value acting almost like gravity. We can see here at the end of 2017, when the stock to flow value predicted a price of $5,500, the actual price overshot this and reached almost $20,000. It's then come back down and consolidated around the stock to flow value fair price. We then went through a halving event in May, meaning the stock to flow value increased again, but we have not seen a substantial increase in price yet. But we've seen this happen before. Back in 2016, we can see that price actually undershot the stock to flow value for quite some time before eventually shooting way above it. Down here below the graph, you can see that we have a variance model. So when this model is green, it means that the price is below the fair value per the stock to flow model. And when this variance model is red, it means the price is above the fair value per the stock to flow model. So guys, not only is this the best performing asset of the past decade, but we have a model that clearly explains the price movements. And we can use this model to tell us when Bitcoin is cheap and when it's expensive. Now, can you imagine if you just bought Bitcoin when this variance model was green? Can you imagine how much money you would have made? Could it really be this simple? Well, I know what I believe, and right now this model is green, telling me that the price of Bitcoin is undervalued to the stock to flow model. And that's why I'm buying so much. That's why I'm putting such a massive allocation of my portfolio into this asset. Now, if we just go back and look at this price chart, which way do you think this is going? Have a look at this and consider which way you think it's going to go next. You don't need to be a trading wizard or have any real knowledge of technical analysis to guess which way this is going. Just take a look at this moving average. This is a 20-month moving average, and you can see how consistent it is. It's like a snake just crawling up the logarithmic chart. If we were to just take a brush here and have a guess at where this is going, in my opinion, we could easily see something like this for the moving average. Now, what would that mean for price? Well, we know that price generally overshoots the moving average, so I could see price doing something like this. I could easily see price hitting $240,000 by 2023 and then coming back down and consolidating towards the fair value per the stock to flow model, which is probably more in the region of $150,000. This isn't rocket science, guys. There really is nothing complex about this. Technology has permeated every facet of our lives, and it's growing at an exponential rate. It makes absolute sense that eventually technology will completely disrupt the mechanisms we use to store value. Bitcoin is a better version of gold. It's less inflationary and it can be transported instantaneously. It's also far more secure and it cannot be confiscated. Don't be so naive as to think that technology will not win out. Technology is relentless and disruption is inevitable. And what you're looking at here when you look at the price of Bitcoin is you're looking at mass adoption. It's supply and scarcity that's ultimately driving the price of Bitcoin. Now take a look at this image by Binance Academy showing that only 0.27% of the global population can own one Bitcoin each. So there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins put into existence. And based on the current population, This is the percentage of them that could own a full whole Bitcoin each. And we are now entering into a phase of mass adoption. We recently saw MicroStrategy come out and state that they were putting 90+% of their treasuries into Bitcoin. Over $400 million they put into Bitcoin. And this is just the start of mass corporate adoption. This tells me that Bitcoin has real world value, and that value is its ability to store value over time. I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take this as financial advice, but personally I'm trying to buy as much of this as I can now while it's ridiculously cheap and while most people don't understand the fundamentals of it and don't have an appreciation for just how transformative and disruptive this technology is. So guys, if you got value from this video, please smash the like button, show me some support, and let me know down in the comments below if you've been accumulating Bitcoin like I have. And if you haven't, why not? And don't give me that argument of it's a Ponzi scheme, because I know that you haven't done any research. If you're going to simply shrug this off, the least you can do is do an hour or two of research. Go onto YouTube, look up Anthony Pompliano, look up Preston Pysh, and spend some time actually understanding how this thing works before you simply shrug it off. Guys, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one.